Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Major details emerging today of the huge upgrade Ferrari are planning to bring for the Imola Grand Prix. McLaren gained roughly 0.4 of a second with their upgrade in Miami. That led to a race victory. Ferrari are targeting a similar improvement of 0.4 of a second in that ballpark for the Imola Grand Prix. They were only a tenth or so off the pace on a lap-by-lap basis of Lando Norris's McLaren in Miami. Will they be the fastest car on this basis come Imola? Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, on Ferrari, today they were testing in Fiorano these new wheel cover spray guards that are intended by the FIA to make wet racing actually possible again in properly heavy conditions. Today they were testing this. Tomorrow they are going to be testing in a 200-kilometer test day, filming day, their new upgrades. So perfectly timed, arguably, this from Ferrari. I think it was Schwartzman and Behrman in the car today. Possibly Arthur Leclerc is going to be in the car tomorrow as well. But this is one version of the spray guards. They tested a couple. This is like a full-on cover. This, of course, you guys can see there's holes in the side of it. And they had a couple of ideas here to bring to the track and a couple of versions to see if anything was actually going to work. They do look kind of horrifically ugly, I'm not going to lie. If they work, that's fine. I do have my questions on how exactly, how easy these are to be removed and, actually applied, and how you even do a pit stop with these, just because ideally, if the race starts wet, you slap these on at the start. But when it dries up, what does a pit stop look like with these monstrosities on the car? But then again, if it works, I don't really care. The question is, does it work? So these are some images here from Formula Uno today, when they tried various versions on the front and the rear. This is far more of a full covering of the wheel than we have seen previously, which makes it theoretically more intrusive, but theoretically better at doing what it's meant to do. This is just another shot as well. This is probably the shot of the day, trying to compare what this actually looks like, right? So this is, when I first saw this, I thought, wow, it's not doing anything at all. But actually, the more you look at it, this car in the back here has no wheel covers on. The car in the front does. Now, people who were at the track said we didn't really see much difference. But this image does make it look at least somewhat substantial. Like, it does seem to me that the spray coming off the front car is marginally lower than what comes off the back car. Then again though, some of the spray off the front car is still in the air when you're looking at the spray at the back, so that increases the density somewhat. So I don't really know. Does this look less dense than this? Probably. Is it a massive difference? Probably not. It does seem like, just based on the way that that front tyre looks here at the front, that it is clearly doing something to prevent the spray flying in the sky. The problem is that it's not the wheels that create most of the spray, it's the diffuser at the back of the car. Certainly in the ground effect here that we are currently in, the air comes through the Venturi tunnels on the floor, so do the water droplets, and they get fired up into the sky, especially nowadays with the way that they're trying to generate the downforce compared to what it was in the previous generation of cars. And you can't cover the diffuser because you'll just wreak havoc with the aerodynamics, and the engineers will not be happy with that. So the only thing that you can realistically do is cover the tyres, and if it makes it 20% better, then maybe that means that we can race in 20% more conditions like that, which is probably a good thing. But, I hope that it just works, because I'm not really sure that it does. And it's obviously not especially pretty. Now, there was discussions that these versions are not really expected to be probably anything like what we finally get. This is more just experimentation. They're trialing different designs to see whether what they see in the simulations actually matches what they see in reality, right? So they're trying these couple of different versions, and obviously we see one at the top here, one at the bottom, not necessarily because that's what it's going to look like, but more so just to see, is the behavior of the water droplets in, using these devices what we expect it to be? And if it is, then maybe they can be confident their simulations are actually rather accurate. But does it work? I think it still remains to be seen. They trialed something similar to this at Silverstone last year on the Mercedes. It failed emphatically. My feeling is that probably today they were slightly more successful, but yeah, I'm not convinced it's going to be a game changer yet. And if the FIA have now had 2 rounds of attempts here with multiple different prototypes and basically nothing has worked, it's not a great sign that these cars have any hope of being able to race properly in wet conditions. basically since the Ground Effect era, and they're just massive in general, really, compared to what they used to be several years ago. Red Bull are not in a tricky spot. They're still probably going to win both championships this season, but it's not an absolute 100% guarantee as it seemed to be several weeks ago. Horner, as well as not Newey from his organisation, Horner actually denied that his investigation was anything to do with Newey's exit. Newey hasn't commented on this, and until, if Newey wants to comment on it, that's when we'll probably know, although all the rumours say that, yeah, it was at least partly to blame. And there's also an argument that Eddie Jordan, Newey's manager, may have said to Horner and Red Bull, hey, look, just let Newey go from his contract as soon as possible. Sure, he'll work on the RB17 until its conclusion, but we are not going to have any gardening leave, because if you do force him to stay on the contract, maybe Newey will say a couple of words publicly in terms of what he feels about behind the scenes at Red Bull and all these other factors. And you can argue that Newey has, some leverage over Horner and the team, given what he may know about those internal affairs, what he may believe about those internal affairs and the implications that could have on the future of Red Bull. So, there probably was a fair bit of leverage for Newey to get out of that Red Bull relationship as he intended, and it was actually mentioned in a video yesterday from the race that Newey's intention is absolutely probably to go elsewhere. That is at least the belief of insiders, that he would unlikely have rescheduled down this gardening leave to a 0 gardening leave period and really been forceful on that if he didn't have a return somewhere in mind. Now, Max Verstappen actually said that Zach Brown wants to stir things up. Of course, he made the comments to the effect that there's loads of CVs going around, more dominoes are going to fall after Newey's departure. Max says, Zach's just stirring things up. Pretty funny that his own father has absolutely been stirring things up over the last couple of months, saying that it's going to implode under Horner and all this stuff. But obviously Max isn't going to really comment on that, is he? So let's talk about some of the upgrades arriving for the Imola Grand Prix. This is a really interesting part of the season. It's going to tell us a lot, I think, this Grand Prix, in terms of what we are going to see from now to the end of the year. This was notable as well. Max had some damage on lap 21 when he hit the bollard. We don't really know how much. I think that 0.25 second a lap figure, or in turn 1 figure we saw the other day, I think that was with respect to Norris rather than with respect to Verstappen's previous lap times before the damage, which makes more sense actually, and also kind of means that Red Bull was not performing and wasn't set up in the way they would arguably liked it to have been. But Piastri on that lap 2 to 21 stint was only half a tenth off Max on average over the course of those laps, which is very impressive given that Piastri's McLaren was 0.2 of a second a lap slower than Norris's McLaren, right? Because he only had half the upgrades, and the belief is that, yeah, there was roughly 0.2 between Piastri's car and Norris's car. And, Norris is a faster driver than Piastri, I believe, at least on race pace. That certainly still seems to be the case. So it really is no surprise that when Max picked up some damage, Lando, romped the rest of the Grand Prix from the safety car and beyond. Sure, he got kind of lucky with the way the safety car picked up Max and all this stuff, and maybe without that, he would have ended in second place after the safety car. But he probably would have still got past Max, given the rather substantial pace advantage that's the McLaren had. Would have been great to see them come to blows on track. But actually, Norris has been talking to the media today and basically saying, yeah, we will have more battles, and I'm really ready to do battle with Max, which is very exciting given what we've talked about, criticisms of Norris, shall we say, over the last couple of years or so. Now, Red Bull are going to bring some upgrades to Imola. They brought some to Suzuka. They reckon that was worth maybe 1/10 of a second. They're going to bring some to Imola as well. Now, we saw Newey yesterday suggest that there are some things, or at least there's one specific thing on the Red Bull this year, the RB20, that he doesn't really like, and he would like to see change for next year and beyond. This upgrade, though, will not be addressing whatever that is, and the belief is that it's a relatively minor upgrade for Red Bull, maybe another 1/10 of a second they're going to try and unlock. They're going to bring a couple more things, but it's unlikely to be revolutionary, is the feeling, whereas Ferrari's upgrade is of that ilk. Mercedes as well, we don't often discuss their upgrades nowadays because there isn't much confidence they're going to do much, but actually Mercedes are saying the upgrade they brought to Miami did work. Now, they did say they brought half their upgrade to Miami, the other half is going to arrive in Imola. So we know that McLaren brought effectively their full package. They're going to bring more, McLaren over time, but they brought their big package of 9 or 10 new parts to Miami, and it worked very well. So Andrew Chauvelin says, yeah, we brought half to Miami, and it seemed like they were somewhat stronger, but there is an argument, honestly, that Mercedes were the 5th fastest car on the weekends. They were obviously slower than the McLaren, the Red Bull, the Ferrari, faster than the Aston, but very much arguably slower than the RB on the weekends, because Russell, who in my opinion is a faster driver than Tsunoda, could not keep pace with Yuki at the end of the Grand Prix. Danny Rick, sure, didn't have a great race, but in the sprint he was on 4th place on track, right? So there's an argument to say that Mercedes got a decent result given that they were arguably still the 5th fastest car. At very best, they were the 4th fastest car. And there were still complaints made during the Grand Prix and of course in the previous sessions on balance and consistency and the car working lap to lap as it intended to. Hamilton saying that, yeah, I still don't really know what I'm going to get from this car when I, of course, put the seatbelt on, as it were. But Chauvelin says, yeah, the upgrades worked as expected. It is delivering the performance we were hoping from the floor. The issue is at the moment everyone else is developing their cars as well, which of course is true. But maybe some signs of positivity there from Mercedes, because I think the feeling was when they brought this upgrade, certainly to Imola as well, we'll see what they bring next, is it actually going to work? Because their simulation tools have been telling them the wrong stuff for several years now. So can they be confident their upgrade is going to work? Not really, but they saw apparently what they expected to see. So I guess that might be some degree of positivity, but Ferrari have much more reason to be positive. They have a pretty standard base model car to launch the season with. We're now several races in. Red Bull have brought upgrades, McLaren have brought upgrades, Mercedes have brought upgrades, but we are not seeing anything yet from Ferrari until this upcoming Grand Prix in Imola. It's probably not going to be quite like this, although, honestly, for the last couple of seasons, this might be the only way to stop Max Verstappen. This season, it feels like it might be possible to beat him on pure pace again, which has not been the case for basically since 2021, or at the very, earliest, the start of 2022. Now, Ferrari, they're bringing changes. These are going to be quite substantial changes. This is the side-by-side version here, and we're going to see a few changes to the side pods that are actually very much Red Bull inspired. But the major changes are probably going to be to the floor, and that is, of course, where the crux of the downforce emerges from. So this is what the Formula Uno article says, that the plan is to gain 0.3 of a second, possibly more than 0.3. There's been various discussions on this. The theory tends to be it's definitely going to be more than 2.5, and it's possibly going to be no more than 4, but it's in that kind of ballpark. That's what Ferrari are targeting, which is a very substantial upgrade for this part of the regulations. Red Bull brought their changes to Suzuka that seemed, I wouldn't say major, but they were substantial. They apparently gave them, 1/10 of a second, something in that ballpark. And honestly, it's expected at this point in the cycle that, 2/10 is probably all you're going to gain from a serious upgrade package. McLaren, though, gained 4/10 last weekend, and Ferrari are trying to do the same thing. So more load, more aerodynamic load, and more efficiency. The great thing is about efficiency, which is basically straight line speed, is that you can compensate for reduction in drag with a higher rear wing in theory, right? So let's say your car is more aerodynamically efficient, you can then run more rear wing for the same straight line speeds, and then you gain, better downforce certainly at the rear, which protects the rear tyres and all sorts of other advantages. The Ferrari as well is great on its tyres this year in addition, and what they've done to their car, even last year's relatively weak SF23 in the last 12 months, has actually worked. So, I think people are taking Ferrari's word. If they say they're bringing a big upgrade that's worth 3 to 4/10, you kind of got to believe it at this point, which would have not been the case a while ago. The new floor as well is very interesting. So there's new inlets to the side pods, which are Red Bull inspired, and there's a brand new floor, which of course we're not going to be able to see unless somebody puts it in the wall. But look at these side pod designs, right? So the standard side pods, as we saw a second ago, very, basic, right? Just standard inlets as you might expect and we've seen elsewhere. But the Red Bull at the start of the season unveils these rather unexpected double side pod inlets with the vertical slit and then what has kind of been trading between an underbite and an overbite concept. We're not really sure what's better, but it's this vertical slit, which is an interesting entry point to the side pod, which Red Bull kind of pioneered with this year's RB20. They kept it very much hidden, right, with all the other shadows they used at the launch of their car. Now it seems Ferrari are implementing something very similar, but that's probably not going to be massively performance enhancing. What they're really looking at is the floor, because the feeling is that the Venturi entrances to the tunnels at the floor are basically completely changing. So they've got a big new floor they're bringing here, Ferrari, and it's considered to be pretty much a brand new car. Wouldn't say it's quite a B-spec, but as is described here by the Formula Uno guys who know a thing or two about what's going on at Ferrari, they have great contacts. This is definitively a new car by the same men who worked on the SF24 modifications. So yeah, they reckon 15 overall load efficiency points, which is very hard to translate into lap time. You might give it 300ths per load point. So when you put that together, you get, 4/10. You might give it 200ths per load point. That gives you 3/10. So it's very difficult to analyze. It depends on various factors. They are saying 3/10 per lap, but on race pace, potentially an even more ambitious target. So 3/10 a lap quali pace, 4/10 a lap, race pace, who knows? Ferrari are talking a big game, and Ferrari have talked a big game since the dawn of time, right? We know this, but it's only in the last 12, 15 months that I think people have had some confidence that what Ferrari say is actually going to happen, in the same time really that Mercedes have gone entirely the other way. And there's more as well. There's several minor upgrades to the rest of the car. You know, they've preferred not to bring the new front wing overseas, so there's changes there as well. So lots of things that Ferrari are looking to do. You know, floor changes, notably the overbite inlets on the Sidepods going to be completely new. The halo fins, the wings, they're making changes too. So this sounds to me like a McLaren level upgrade where they're going to change the majority of features on the car. And we've heard from Donadoni, this is worth more than 2.5 tenths. And I saw this comment as well where he says it's no more than 4 tenths. It's definitely a big package, not small like Vasseur says. Because Vasseur's kind of been playing this down a bit. He's saying, well, you know, let's just wait and see about this one, guys. Other teams are bringing upgrades as well. But yeah, the journalists are saying, no, this is a big deal. This is a pretty damn sizable upgrade, whatever Vasseur might say. And no more than 4 tenths is like, well, you know, I mean, anything more than 4 tenths would be basically ludicrous at this point, given how advanced these regulations are. And let's have a look at the numbers. Norris was averaging a 132.1 during Miami. Verstappen, of course, was second fastest, nearly a tenth behind. Then Leclerc, a tenth back. Then Sainz, 2 tenths back. Of course, who was, you know, stuck in some battles as well during the Grand Prix. So this is just to show that the Ferraris were not far off the pace of Norris over the course of the Grand Prix. And they were very competitive with Max as well. Like Leclerc was only a couple of seconds off Max at the conclusion of the race, and that is in a Ferrari that hasn't changed in a long time. So you give that Ferrari 3-4 tenths of performance, what are we going to see in Imola, right? That's what I'm really excited for. Red Bull are going to bring changes too. Mercedes are going to bring changes too. Maybe McLaren have 1 or 2 other things up their sleeve as well. But Ferrari, it's a home track for them in Italy. If they turn up here, have a legitimately fast car, and win the Grand Prix, and beat Red Bull on pure pace, that opens the door to, a wide open season, I think. I still think more than likely Max and Red Bull are going to win the season, but if these upgrades do what Ferrari believe they may do, and Red Bull's upgrades this weekend don't maybe do all that much, then wow, we could have a serious season at hand, and certainly I think that's going to be the case next year. Just a quick update here, a surprising move that's just been announced as I was, finishing up editing the video on Xavi Marcos, right? So, engineer for Charles Leclerc, who've been partnered with him for a very long time. We are checking, the We Are Checking guy, he's gone. He's going to be out of there. So for Imola, as of Monday the 13th of May in a couple of days' time, he is no longer going to be the race engineer for Charles. So, interesting timing on this update, right? We saw, I'm sure Charles will be giving his comments on this in due course, because we have seen Valtteri Bottas not happy with him getting a change of race engineer in the middle of the season, and this happening is kind of surprising timing. Now, they say, look, he's not been fired, he's bringing his valuable experience as a race engineer with the Formula 1 team to the development of other important company programs, but yeah, you might argue there's a feeling that Xavi hasn't been doing the job that they expected of him, possibly in recent times, and are looking for somebody to step in better. We don't know who that's going to be yet, so rather fascinating this. So it looks like the era of We Are Checking is coming to a conclusion, so pour one out for that. But actually, second update, they have just confirmed who's going to replace him. It's going to be Brian Bozzi, who's going to be stepping in, who's worked with the team for 10 years, to currently as performance engineer for Leclerc, who will now take up the role as race engineer, and this is the man on the left-hand side. So there we go. That is the update for the, the Gran Premio del Maid in Italy and Del Emilia Romagna at Imola Grand Prix, which I'm not going to bother saying again. Norris, of course, at the factory, celebrating in Papaya with the team, was asked the question by Craig Slater, can you win more races this year? He said, absolutely, we can win and intend to win more races this year with the progress that he's made. Then they asked him, really, how about winning the championship next year? And he says, 100%, we can absolutely do that. So there's lots of confidence from Norris and McLaren that maybe this victory is going to be a point to kick on from, that Norris, having got, the weight of his shoulders of not having won a Grand Prix, is now in position to really kick on to the next gear and take McLaren to a championship fight next season. And also what he said on Max I thought was rather fascinating, because we know that him and Max get along well, but Norris was quick to clarify in this interview that, he's not best friends with Max. They're not talking every single day. They've got mutual respect, they get along well, but they are absolutely not best friends. And Norris is basically saying, yeah, I want to beat Max. I want to challenge him. And that's been a question with Norris over the last couple of years. He's had many occasions he's been wheel to wheel with Max in a far slower car, to be fair, and he's often allowed Max to pass relatively uncontested. And there's been lots of debate, oh well, you know, should Norris have defended harder? You can look at it both ways, because arguably he was in an own race, but when you're fighting for the win, then, you know, you might expect him to put a bit more of a fight, and whether he respects Max too much has been a debate. But I think he was actually rather careful with his words here to make it very clear that no, certainly from this point and onwards, Lando is absolutely wanting to compete with, beat Max when he has the opportunity to do so, and I certainly think with the strength of the cars as we see them at the moment, we are not going to see a world where Lando is, you know, allowing Max into P1 as we have seen in the past, which I'm absolutely excited to see that eventuality. So very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.